The day my boss publicly tore me apart in front of the entire office, calling me a worthless, spineless nobody who would die poor and be stepped over like trash, was the day he unknowingly handed me complete control over his future. Because what he didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that I secretly owned the building we were standing in. It was a regular Tuesday morning in late spring. Sunlight slanted through the half-open blinds, throwing long stripes across the conference table. The room was packed, 47 people squeezed into chairs and standing along the walls. Coffee cups still steaming. Laptops glowing with open tabs and unread emails. The low murmur of people half listening, already mentally drifting back to their desks, checking Slack, planning lunch. I was at the projector, remote in hand, clicking through the quarterly report slides I had rebuilt 4 times over 3 brutal weeks, nights bleeding into mornings, weekends erased, family dinners traded for cold takeout at my desk while everyone else went home. I had just reached the final summary slide, the one where the red ink finally turned black, variances explained, projections aligned. I felt that small, private rush of almost done. The kind you get when you know you've pulled it off despite the odds. Earlier that morning Harlan had stormed out of the CEO's office, door banging against the stop, face already dark red, muttering under his breath as he strode down the hall like he was hunting something to destroy. The last client pitch had gone sideways, numbers missed by a hair, tough questions he couldn't deflect smoothly, and whispers had spread like wildfire through the office by 9 a.m. Everyone knew he was carrying that storm straight into the conference room. I didn't know the full details. I just knew I was standing at the front with the slides, his name in the footer of every single page. And I, the guy who always cleaned up his messes, who worked late to make the numbers shine for him, who took the blame quietly when things went off track, was the closest, easiest target. I felt it coming, a storm about to hit, aimed right at me. The conference room door flew open hard enough to slap the blinds against the glass. Harlan stormed in, every step sharp and deliberate, face tight with fury already boiling over. He didn't glance at the screen. He locked eyes on me and his voice exploded. "You're fired. Pack your pathetic things and get the hell out right now. You look poor, you think poor, you'll die poor. You're the kind of man people step over on the sidewalk without even noticing. Your background noise, barely audible, completely forgettable. You're not leadership material, you're maintenance level at best. You were never meant to rise. You'll always be nothing." He paused, just long enough for the words to burn into every ear, then leaned forward slightly, voice dropping but still carrying to the back wall. "Guys like you should be grateful just to be allowed in the room." The line landed like a physical blow. A ripple of discomfort rolled through the space. Someone inhaled sharply through their teeth. A chair creaked as a person leaned back hard, trying to disappear. Sarah from accounting let her pen slip, clack. It rolled off the table and under a chair. She didn't reach for it, she just stared at the floor, cheeks burning. Mike's thumbs froze over his phone screen, the device tilted in his grip. 2 people near the back exchanged quick, wide-eyed glances, then looked away as if eye contact would make them accomplices. HR's assistant, just outside the glass door with her notepad, froze mid-step, phone halfway to her ear, mouth slightly open. The entire room forgot how to breathe. Silence swallowed everything. The air conditioner hummed like it was the only thing still functioning. The wall clock ticked too loudly. Harlan's cologne, sharp, expensive, always too strong, mixed with the tension and turned my stomach. My palms were drenched. They slid on the table edge as I tried to steady myself. My heart hammered in my throat, my ears, behind my eyes. My lungs refused to fill completely. A thin line of sweat trickled down my temple. But the deepest wound wasn't the public shaming. It was the betrayal. Because this was the same man who, 6 months earlier at the Christmas party, had stood under twinkling string lights with a champagne flute raised high. He had draped his arm around my shoulders in front of the entire company, wives, partners, kids included, and announced with genuine warmth, "To my right-hand man." The one who actually makes this place run. Indispensable. We'd fall apart without him. My wife had been standing right beside me, eyes shining with quiet pride. Later that night Harlan had pulled her aside near the dessert table, lowered his voice, and said, "Your husband is gold. Truly irreplaceable. I'm lucky to have him." Last year, after an all-nighter strategy session that ended with the sun coming up behind the blinds, he had leaned back in his chair, loosened his collar, looked me straight in the eye and said, "Partnership is coming. Equity. A real seat at the table. Just keep carrying the load like you do, and it's yours. I promise." I believed every word. I drank them like water in a desert. Because of those promises I gave him everything. Weekends became myth. My daughter's 8th birthday, I told her over a glitchy video call that Daddy has to finish something important. Her lip trembled, she whispered, "But you said you'd be here." I missed 3 anniversaries in a row. Flowers arrived late, wilted on the kitchen counter while I debugged reports Harlan had promised clients by Monday morning. I covered for his sloppy forecasts. I stayed silent when he bent rules to hit quarterly numbers. I even sat in his office until 2 a.m. more than once, listening while he poured out his fears about his failing marriage, his stress, his doubts, treating me like family, like a brother he could trust with the things he couldn't tell anyone else. And now the man who called me indispensable was calling me nothing. The man who toasted me was humiliating me. The man who promised me partnership was erasing me in front of 47 witnesses. That flip, that complete, merciless reversal, cut deeper than any insult ever could. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. There was no point. I nodded once, jaw so tight I tasted blood from biting the inside of my cheek, then slowly gathered my things. The small framed photo of my wife laughing at the beach with our daughter on her shoulders, my dog-eared notebook full of ideas I'd never get to use here, my empty coffee mug with the faint ring of yesterday's brew still visible inside. Every sound felt obscene in that heavy silence. Papers sliding into the cardboard box someone silently handed me from under the table, the scrape of my chair legs on the low-pile carpet, the soft thud of my footsteps as I walked toward the door. No one spoke. No one stood up. Just 47 pairs of eyes filled with pity, discomfort, and the quiet, guilty relief that it wasn't them. The door closed behind me with the gentlest click. That night the dam finally burst. I sat on the living room couch, head in my hands, and the sobs came hard and ugly, choking, gasping, the kind that hurt your ribs and leave you hollow afterward. My wife wrapped her arms around me from behind and just held on. She kept whispering into my hair, "You are enough. You have always been enough. He doesn't get to decide your worth." But the wound stayed open and bleeding. For weeks I couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time. His voice looped endlessly, "You were never meant to rise, guys like you should be grateful just to be in the room." I started avoiding mirrors. I'd catch my reflection in the bathroom glass and turn away fast, afraid I'd see the maintenance-level man he described staring back. I hesitated every single time I opened my banking app, bracing myself for numbers that might somehow confirm I really was destined to stay small. I replayed every coworker's microreaction, Sarah's pen hitting the floor twice, Mike's frozen thumbs, the way no one met my eyes as I left. I wondered if they had always seen me that way, useful, but ultimately disposable. Worst of all were the thoughts about my daughter. The dad who missed birthdays, recitals, bedtime stories. The dad who got fired like he was trash. One night I sat at my desk staring at my resume. I rewrote it 3 times, changing fonts, rephrasing bullet points, staring at the word manager under my name, wondering if I had ever truly deserved to write it, or if I had just been fooling myself the whole time. I felt erased. Invisible. Worthless. Then one sleepless night, driven by a mix of anger and exhaustion, I climbed the attic stairs and dragged out the old cardboard boxes from my father's estate. Dusty files. Faded envelopes. Contracts I had skimmed years ago and filed away without much thought. My father's voice came back sharp and clear. Build in silence, son. Let your work speak when the moment arrives. Never show your full hand too early. I started reading, line by line, clause by clause, highlighting passages I had glossed over before. The next morning I called my lawyer before the sun was fully up. Every document, I said. Every signature. Every footnote. Go back through it all. Tell me exactly what I have. As the reports started coming in, email after email, scanned pages, highlighted sections, the picture sharpened. Hints of leverage. A property tied to long-term holdings. Signatures someone had rushed through years ago without reading the fine print. The more I studied, the colder the realization settled in. Harlan hadn't just signed papers. He had signed away control. And he had never even noticed who was really holding the pen on the other side. And that's when the truth landed like a thunderclap. Harlan had been screaming at the landlord. That quiet, overlooked investment wasn't minor. It was the entire office building. I owned it, through a perfectly structured anonymous holding company my father had set up before he passed. I had kept it completely secret from day one. I never told a single person at the company. I started there as an ordinary analyst on purpose, to earn respect the hard way, to see who people really were when they didn't know there was money behind the quiet guy in the cubicle. Harlan had personally signed every lease renewal, every addendum, every extension. His bold, careless signature was on every critical page. He had never once asked who actually owned the asset. He was too busy looking down from his corner office, too busy being the man who decided who belonged in the room and who didn't. Now I held the keys, literally and figuratively. I didn't act in rage. I acted cold, methodical, completely legal. First step. My legal team documented every lease violation, chronic late payments that had been quietly rolled over, unauthorized structural changes to create the open plan vibe he loved so much, multiple safety code breaches Harlan had personally approved to save budget and impress the board. One clean, professional letter went out on crisp letterhead, lease non-renewal. 90 days to vacate. Second step. I quietly passed credible, sourced information to independent forensic auditors. Discrepancies in financial reporting, hidden executive perks, questionable approvals. All drawn from public filings, internal leaks from conscience-heavy employees who had quietly reached out after my firing, and legitimate channels. No hacking. No crimes. Whispers turned into conversations in the break room. Relocation rumors spread like wildfire. Investigation talk grew louder in hushed phone calls and encrypted messages. Harlan still barked orders in meetings, but the fear was creeping into his posture, his tone, the way his eyes flicked toward the door whenever someone mentioned facilities or lease. The breaking point arrived in a board-level crisis meeting I orchestrated through intermediaries. Harlan strode in with his usual swagger, briefcase swinging, smile practiced, expecting a routine lease discussion he could bully his way through. Then the projector lit up. Slide after slide, violations itemized in bullet points, audit findings in stark black and white, termination clauses activated and highlighted in red. When I walked in as the building owner's authorized representative, the room temperature dropped 10 degrees. His face went gray. Mouth opened. Opened again. You? The word cracked in half. The man whose voice used to dominate every room now sounded like a frightened boy caught in a lie. Sweat beaded instantly on his forehead, rolled down his temples, soaked the collar of his custom shirt. His hands shook so violently the stack of papers rattled like dry leaves in wind. He kept darting glances around the long table, searching for rescue, for anyone to step in and pull him out of the fire. No one did. The board members sat stone-faced. The video feed from remote investors showed frozen expressions of professional detachment. "Please, son," he stammered, calling me son, now after calling me trash, "we can fix this. It was just one bad day. You're overreacting. Let's step outside, talk privately." I'll give you shares. Cash. A promotion. Whatever you want. Please, don't do this to me. His voice kept fracturing mid-sentence, high, thin, desperate, the confidence that had once filled hallways now reduced to a pleading whimper. He extended a trembling hand, palm glistening with sweat. I stepped back one calm pace. I looked him directly in the eyes and said, quiet but clear enough for every microphone to catch. No, Harlan. I'm not overreacting. I'm responding. You said guys like me should be grateful just to be allowed in the room. Today you're begging to stay in mine. The silence that followed was thicker than concrete. I turned and walked out. Behind me, his empire imploded in real time. Within weeks the company was fully evicted. Harlan was terminated with cause. The cascading scandals, financial irregularities splashed across industry newsletters, reputational damage that made headhunters cross his name off lists, buried what remained of his career. Months later the world feels different. Cleaner. Lighter. Breathable. I sail most weekends now. The salt wind and open water wash away the last traces of poison. I haven't missed a single school event since. My daughter runs across the playground to throw her arms around me, and those hugs rebuild pieces I didn't know were broken. My wife and I take quiet trips, small coastal towns, long walks on empty beaches, real conversations that don't revolve around deadlines or performance reviews. One ordinary afternoon I walked into the lobby of the building. The new receptionist, young, polite, no memory of the old regime, looked up from her screen and smiled. Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Through the tall glass doors I saw Harlan in the far corner of the parking lot. He was wrestling the last cardboard box into the back seat of an old, dented sedan, faded silver paint, dented rear fender, nothing like the gleaming black SUV he used to park in the executive bay with the personalized plate. Security stood right beside him, not as escorts for protection, but as enforcers making sure he actually left the property and didn't linger on premises he no longer had any claim to. Our eyes met for half a second across the distance. He dropped his gaze immediately. Shoulders curled inward. Head bowed. He climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine with a rough turn of the key, and pulled away slowly, like a man trying not to be noticed by the world anymore. He once said I was meant to be stepped over. Now he drives past a building that quietly bears my family name on the polished brass plaque by the main entrance. I was never nothing. I was just patient. If this story moved you, if you believe no one should ever have their dignity crushed the way mine was, please drop respect in the comments. It really does mean a lot to see. And if you'd like more real stories of betrayal turned into quiet, satisfying justice, I'd be truly grateful if you subscribed. Thank you for staying with me all the way through.